So watch this. A former Saudi intelligence chief says this. Saudi intelligence chief gave a speech about what's happening in Gaza, and this is what he said. Watch this.
All militarily occupied people have a right to resist their occupation.
So he's saying that if you're being occupied, you have a right to resist it. So he's saying
talking
that
about Ukraine.
He's talking about Gaza.
Even militarily.
Even militarily.
I do not support the military option in Palestine. I prefer the other option, civil insurrection and disobedience. It brought down the British Empire in India and the Soviet Empire in Eastern Europe. Israel has overwhelming military superiority, and we see in front of our eyes the devastation and oblivion it is bringing to the people of Gaza. I categorically condemn Hamas's targeting of civilian targets of any age or gender, as it is accused of. Such targeting belies Hamas's claims to an Islamic identity. There is an Islamic injunction against the killing of innocent children, women, and elders. The injunction is also against the desecration of places of worship. I also condemn Hamas's gifting the higher moral ground to an Israeli government that is universally shunned, even by half of the Israeli public, as fascist, miscreant, and abhorrent. I condemn Hamas for giving this awful government the excuse to ethnically cleanse Gaza of its citizens and bombing them to oblivion. I condemn Hamas to further undermining the Palestinian Authority, as Israel has been doing. I condemn Hamas for sabotaging the attempt of Saudi Arabia to reach a peaceful resolution to the plight of the Palestinian people. But equally, I condemn Israel's indiscriminate bombing of Palestinian innocent civilians in Gaza and the attempt to forcibly drive them into Sinai. I condemn Israeli targeted killing and the indiscriminate arrest of Palestinian children, women, and men in the West Bank. Two wrongs don't make a right. I've been hearing a repeated phrase in American media, unprovoked attack. What more provocation is required to make it provoked than what Israel has done to the Palestinian people for 3/4 of a century?
That is kind of, so it goes back to just like what they did in the Ukraine war. People go, well, you know, Putin had just, he's the one who invaded, he attacked. So they start the story in the third act, right? They forget that we overthrew their government in Ukraine in 2014, and we had Minsk, we had peace agreements with Ukraine totally ignored. They bombed the people, the Russian speakers who didn't want to go along with the coup government, and they bombed the shit out of them, killed 18,000 people or so, and then they ramped up their bombing to provoke Putin to cut the whole thing. They don't talk about the threat of putting Ukraine into NATO. They just start right there, and that's what they do with Gaza too. They go, well, Hamas started this war. Well, you forget the 70 years of oppression and occupation? But yes, they do. They just out of the way. You forget that Israel funded Hamas so they could do this very thing? Yes, they do. So here we go. Back to this.
I refer you to the article in the Middle East Monitor of February 17, 2014, under the title, Israeli Army Veterans Admit Role in Massacre of Palestinians in 1948. Read it and weep, as I did.
And they also forget about the Nakba, how Israel was founded. They went and massacred Palestinians.
No, they said we could all live together, and then the Arabs said we don't want to live with Jews.
That was the story.
That's the story I was told.
Yeah, that's the story you were told. That turns out that's not the story.
What?
Yeah.
Just this year, from May to July, over 450 Palestinians were killed, including 67 children. This bloodletting must stop. I condemn Israel's stealing of Palestinian lands. I condemn Israeli colonists for rampaging through houses of worship in the Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. I condemn Israel for destroying Palestinian homes and olive orchards. I condemn Israel for incarcerating Palestinian women, children, and men in concentration camps without recourse to due process. I condemn Israel's targeted killings and assassinations of Palestinians. I condemn Israel for funneling guttery money to Hamas, the terrorist group as defined by Israel. I condemn Western politicians for shedding tears when Israelis are killed by Palestinians, but refuse to even express sorrow when Israelis kill Palestinians. There are no heroes in these conflicts, only victims.
So that sounds very measured, very sober, and it sounds like he's condemning violence against civilians on whoever does it.
If there's any consolation to him, the Western politicians probably aren't shedding tears for either one of them.
No, they're not. And as we showed in previous, this has a lot to do with oil and gas. That's something.
It's funny nobody mentions that.
Nobody, but it's
I
real.
condemn them stealing their large natural gas reserves. You would think that would be included with their lands, the large reserves.
You see how they choked off. They did the sanctions on Iran. They blew up the port in Beirut. They blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. So they're trying to choke off all the other ways of getting fossil fuels. And then we're gonna leave the Israeli one open, and now Israel's going to become an exporter of fossil fuels, and so the United States.
Who runs that? I mean, if you're like, I wonder who's behind. I guess who runs the companies that are benefiting, right?
Yeah. Wow. So that was something. So that's Saudi Arabia's foreign. He is the former Saudi intelligence chief. And that sounded very sober. That didn't sound mental at all.
When was he working? When the 9/11 thing happened? A lot of Saudis were in that.
You tell me. Hey, come see us doing a live stand-up show. We'll be in Burbank, California, Oxnard, California, Venice, California, Palmdale, California. Then we're going to Omaha, Des Moines, Milwaukee, Lansing, Bend, Oregon, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, and Boston, Massachusetts. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets.